Okay, good morning. So the next step, we're going to go through how to create a proportions guide, so your sort of base model, and how we're going to block it out using a lot of very simple shapes. So I have this character, which is all ready for retopology at this point, and basically taking it to the next level of modeling detail. But if I were to separate all these objects, because they're currently combined, if I just go mesh and separate, and I'm addicted to deleting history after I separate, you'll see that this character is actually made up of a lot of separate individual pieces. And while at first it can look quite complex, when you actually sort of get in close here, you realize that each of these pieces is made using the same smoothed cube. So if I were to just say create a cube and smooth that, this is the shape that I've used to create pretty much every single piece in this character. There's only a couple points where I've used a cube with just a single edge loop down the middle, but primarily we're going to be using this to construct the rest of the character. And in so doing, it's going to give us a good introduction to a lot of the tools we'll be using for the more detailed modeling much later on. Things like insert edge loop, extrude, and lattices, which are really cool for deforming a character. So why do this? Like, why bother blocking out your character in a bunch of different simple shapes before actually just, like, rather than just going in and building your edge loops right away, just building your line by line of polygonal loops. Well, the reason why this is so useful is I can come in here and I can make pretty substantial adjustments to the character very, very quickly because of the fact that everything is a separate object. I can just come in here and scale in an object independently of everything else. So for example, I can make his torso wider, thinner. I can do some pretty huge changes to the structure of his arms and his legs, for example. I can tell that his pelvis is kind of out of alignment at the moment, so if I just, for example, grabbed just those parts of the character, dropped a lattice on there, maybe dropped a lattice that was a little bit less complicated, so let's bring that all right down to 5 subdivisions. So if I just dropped a lattice on this character, I can then come in and make some huge changes, but I'm not breaking edge flow. Like, and when you're actually working on a character and you're building your edge loops, and if you're trying to do your proportions at the same time, you might find that your parts of the character's body are out of proportion with the rest of him. But the problem is if you're already in your sort of final edge looping, if I make any changes here, it's going to break that flow of edges around the character, and then I'll have to go rebuild that elsewhere in the body. Whereas now, because it's separate objects, I don't care. I don't care if I don't give a shit about edge flow at the moment. So that's number one. I can just do lots of really cool things, and just severely dramatically alter this character without messing up my final flow. Let's just delete history on that. The other reason why this is cool and why it's so damn useful to build this sort of proportional model out of a lot of simple shapes is when you're happy with this, like you're happy with how the muscles are set up relative to each other. You're happy with just where the body is laid out in relation to the other body parts. You can come in here and you can select all of that and just do a mesh combine, making it all one object. And you can make this object live, which means I can draw polygons directly onto it. To do that, there's this little magnet icon at the top of the UI called Make Selected Object Live. If I click on that, you'll see that I can no longer actually select this object, but if I go up to Mesh Tools, I already had my modeling toolkit showing. So Mesh Tools, Show Modeling Toolkit. Down here, I've got this quad draw option. Now what's cool about that is I can now just start to build my edge loops directly onto the character. And no No need to sit in here and adjust the placement of vertices. I don't have to be working out like, oh, well, you know, how big does his shoulder need to be in relation to everything else, blah, 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 etc., etc. Because I've already done that. That's all. Those decisions have already been made in this sort of like block out stage. And it's just ridiculously easy. It's stupid easy. So I can come in, of course, and I can adjust the placement of all these vertices. And you'll see that because the object is live, when I move a vertice around, it actually slides over the surface of the character. So this is just a really nice, easy way of building up low poly topology in a low poly character. Now, that whole process of building out your quads and creating clean edge loops, we'll go through all that in another video. For now, though, I just want to show you how to build a proportional character like what I've got here.